Well, before I came down with shingles, this is what I was working on, and this is the rear seat pan. This is about as far as I had gotten on it before I got sick. Now I just have to make the scoops for the seat brackets. I took and made this out of one piece of metal. You'll see me trying to convince myself that I was going to be able to save parts of that old one, which I was just kidding myself. And it went smooth in the beginning, and towards the end, these curved pieces where it goes around the frame really started fighting me because as I welded the front, the metal really wanted to deform. What I'll say is this isn't my forte, and I've never banged out something that was this complicated before. If you're going to be doing something like this and you don't have any experience, at the end of this, I think I'm going to put some lessons learned about what I did wrong here. When I was going on this full steam, I planned on banging out some of those dents and fixing some of the screw ups. And now I don't have it in me to do that. And it's probably a good thing because it just doesn't matter. It's a floor pan for under a seat in the back of the car, and all it has to do is be functional, and it doesn't really matter what it looks like or how perfect it is. By the same token, it would kind of be a shame if this was the nicest thing on the whole car. So we don't want to put it in that category. But anyway, first we'll take a look at how I got here, and then I'll show you how I made the buck form that I made for this. What I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to make these and cut out the holes where they fit in here. I still got to bend these up. I've got my pattern here, and I don't think that's going to be too tough of a task for me to accomplish. It seems like over the past couple of days, a lot of people have come across my videos and shared all kinds of kind thoughts, and I'm flattered, and I can't thank you enough for that, especially right now when I'm on the rebound. It certainly helps cheer me up. So without further ado, there's a hole there. Looking at our hole here from the top, we got a spot there. I don't know how far I want to get into this. I'd like to patch this up a little bit before I get the gas tank back in. The unfortunate kind of area to have to screw with. This pan's just rolled up over onto a chunk of wood here. I might be able to just take these screws out, zip it here, I don't know, somewhere about halfway. Do something like that. I don't know. Well, upon further inspection, what do you do about that? Alright, well I took that out, the back, but I think the good news is that the wood's in really good shape. Now I have access to the top side, so that's going to come in handy for cleaning. There's some wires there. Got to run a new fuel line for the tank. I want to do this while the tank's out and do as much as I can to kind of, everything needs attention basically. So you can't do all of it, but I can do some of it. And I can position the car better for the future, I think, by knocking some of the stuff off now and just doing it quick. Because I think really the trick with this stuff is just go quick. I don't think there's a better secret than that. Just go, do it, and do the best you can. Just put it back together the way it was if you can't do it the right way, unless you really backed into that kind of a corner. So anyway, here's the pan. We got problem areas all the way down and around, and there, and there. It looks a lot better from the back, actually. The back doesn't really have the scariness of the front does. The inside held water. I'm just going to make part of this because making this whole thing is very time consuming, and we're not doing that right now. A little bit more to go. We're getting there. We're just giving the car a little booster shot and a massage.
that might be the original color of the car right there. And that would obviously be the original if it's behind there. The car was blue originally. Obviously not the Bluick blue that it's become, but it was always a blue Bluick. I think if there's a problem here that exceeds all of the problems, it's this hump. This is a hard thing to deal with. I hope that I could patch this together and just bend up some of the parts and pieces from it. I might be able to save this side over here. You know, and there's guys out there that would take and beat this whole pan out of one sheet of metal, and you know, I'm not that dude. These are just plug welded, so we can get those out. If you look at this plane here, this plane, the bottom of the pan, is actually your original piece of sheet metal. So this is a flat piece of sheet metal as it started, and all of these stampings are where they formed it in a press. These notches are for relief, and you can see where the metal's wrinkled up. We know that this is stretched down, and as they went up around and they made a corner out of it, this all needed to shrink. So that actually helps us. Maybe we can pre-shrink some of this. My better judgment is telling me to assemble this and beat this out first, then take it back apart, and then cut these. These are just going to be slotted straight through. And after this is formed, the other two sacrificial layers come off, and then it's just this one and the top one that are going to be in use. And then the top one is the one that's going to be fluted with that, and we'll beat those beads in to that channel that we create. You know, so you can imagine this goes down, and then from this side you're going up. So you can probably get a better idea how it fits here. I have to bring this here out a little bit by hand, and then it'll let it go back all the way here. That's where the corner is going to fold up. Oh, there's what the hell looks like. I think that should be good enough for what we're going for here. Not perfect, but we don't got time for perfect on this one. Able to make them roll in the way they did. I might touch some of this up, but got to get on to the next steps. That took way too much time. Well, there's our layout lines. See how this goes. Not 100% sure about this. This is tricky up in here because this is where it's going to roll. This is where the back of the pan is going to roll up. And these two, or these
sidewalls, which have to flip different directions. And then this is just going to have to get capped with a separate piece. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but at this point I just got to do something. I can't sit here and scratch and draw anymore because it's just taking up too much time. So if something's wrong, we'll just patch a piece in and fix it as we go. Getting nervous. Well, that's where we're at so far. I'm almost there and I'm running out of wind. It's almost good. I brought it into the car for some fine tuning before I commit too much farther, and I got to make a few cutouts for the body mounts in the back. Once it drops down in, then we can look at the trickier part, which is right here. Then we can see how good I did at mocking up these flanges here. I try to leave them a little bit long so I can pull them down if I need to. And I think the front's going to be easy. The back corners are going to be a little bit tricky, but not trying to make this perfect, just trying to make it suitable. Here's our two pieces in our pattern. Gonna cut them both out together. Well, that's what that looks like. Oh, down in the danger box of all places. And there's our layout lines with the folds marked in. If you drill out these holes where you're gonna fold, it works better. And it also lets you take the two pieces and cut them together. And you don't have to worry about clamps. And there's our two parts. Someday I'll have a 3-in-1. Well, that should do that. Not too bad. Alright, well that's as good as that gets. They're in, they work, it's good enough. Years ago, I watched my boss make one of these in an old shop I used to work at in an old Hilltown garage. That's when I realized you could take a piece of tin and turn it into a bowl, or I didn't realize you could stretch metal. It's been a long time since I screwed with anything like this, and you can probably tell. I think the thing I'd say is, if you're gonna do this, don't let your search stop here. But the first thing is, do not use 18 gauge. That was not a good idea, and that was an ordering error on my part. I think 20 gauge, something like that, be good enough. Easier to weld, but I don't think that as much welding would need to happen if you're using the right gauge metal. The other thing I'd say is I broke my golden rule on measurements, and what I mean by that is over here I marked out my center lines, and what I do whenever I'm making a template, I start in a position, preferably the center, and then I mark out from there. Mark out the center in X and Y, and then if I wanted, instead of measuring like say the width of this, I would measure from center to the corner and then center to this corner. And that's how I normally mark things out, because it's hard to lose that way. Just for a note, if you're making a pattern, a template, whatever, pick an X and Y reference point and stay true to them. And if you have to transpose, do it. Figure out how to get this plane parallel over on this side if you got to do something over there. So what I did here was, if you look close, there's a Sharpie line there. Measured this distance. Now, I think this is useful here, so stick with me. I measured this distance to just where the pan starts to roll up. And so I did that all the way around. And so I made myself this rough shape. Then what I did was, once I had that kind of all mapped out, it was 18 and change, whatever that says, from center line to there. Now I know where the pan stops being flat, and that was important for two reasons. That was important for the buck, so that I knew where to end it. And the other thing that it was invaluable for, this was my tape line right here. So what I mean by that is, this is where I started masking. For something like this, if you've never done it, you cover it with masking tape, and then you trace out the corners, kind of like you're just kind of grazing over the corner with a pencil or a marker or something. And then you gingerly remove your template, your masking tape, and you unfold it, and sometimes you might have to make some relief cuts or whatever. But this line here gives you a reference point to start from. So now you can take your new piece, you can mark out X and Y, measure over 18 inches, and throw your template down. So in this case, I think what I did was I brought it up to this corner. So I brought my masking tape up there, and I pulled it off. And then I had a line on the new tin to snap that to. So, don't be intimidated by this roll here. Angles are easy. This radius is not easy, and it changes, and it changes, and it changes, and you don't necessarily know what is and what isn't critical until it's too late sometimes. So, and it worked. Now, I think enough of that. One of the things that I would say is, where I slotted this and fluted it. This is the slot. This is the slot, and on the top part is the flute. And I don't have the energy to pull this apart right now, but the slot was 3/4, the flute was 3/4, and this was a piece of 3/4 stock that I cut off. I drilled it. I cut off an impact bit and sunk it into the hole, welded it, and it broke. I must have weakened the material when I welded it. You know, you just make something like that out of a piece of junk. I think the point I'm trying to make is use a bigger flute and slot than your bit. So I mean, in this case, I think I could have got away with a 1-inch using a 3/4 bit. You know, and I think the thing to keep in mind is when you're stretching, the more material, the better. So yeah, trying to force all that material down into a 3/4 inch hole was not practical, and it wasn't going to happen. If you got to make something like this that has like a dish shape to it or a bowl shape, you know, what I should have done was I should have truncated it right here. In this last bit of belly, take this part out and just put a flat piece in, and then I wouldn't have ended up with that dome like I did. You saw me using the radial arm saw, and I will not suggest anybody do that unless either you have one and you know how to use it, or you're willing to put the time and effort into figuring out the saw, because they're not simple and they're extremely dangerous. And I've used those things for a long time and I'm pretty comfortable with them. But just a word of warning, you know, if that looks like a good idea and a good way to do this, well, you know, it kind of is. But I don't know that it's a safe way to do it. So just a cautionary word. Those things, they don't show any mercy. There's an awful lot of adjustments and settings on them, and if you move it across the room, it's probably going to be out of adjustment by the time it gets there. So incredibly useful saws, but they're a commitment. I think the other thing I would point out is if you got anything to do that's similar to those side panels, I put that in as one chunk, and I had to wrestle it in there. And I don't know that that was a very good idea, because I think that was part of my problem, why I had so much distortion over here, because, you know, that piece isn't fully shaped and rounded the way you want it, and you're kind of tacking it and pushing it as you go. As you heat it up with the welder, that stress wants to run away and spread out into the metal. So I would say if you're doing something like that, cut it in half, do 2 pieces, seam it in the middle. By the time you grind, nobody's gonna know. One more thing I think probably didn't show too well was that to get the scoop kind of wedge shape out of this in here, what I ended up doing was I rolled it back up. You saw that. I cut these out, but after I cut these out, I snipped this back here, and then I bent it up. Again, I am probably not the professor to be teaching this class. I'm just showing what I went through, and you know, whether anybody looking at this is going to be doing, you're going to probably have a completely different thing than we're looking at here, but it's just for some ideas of different ways you could go about it. I figured I would just wrap up, hopefully save somebody else some hassle, because this was a lot, and you know, all I got out of the deal was a floor pan, and that makes me sad inside.